Have you ever felt that sudden chill, as if something invisible cuts through the air, whispering a warning the mind can't explain? Well, there are signs that can no longer be ignored. A silent movement is approaching, and it respects no borders, flags, or human power. A harvest is underway, and the next territories have already been chosen. We're not talking about rumors, but something that has already begun to manifest itself in the skies, the seas, and even within hearts that have grown cold as stone. You may not have realized it yet, but everything around you is changing at a frightening rate. What once seemed distant is now knocking on the doors of entire nations. And the burning question is, why these countries? What do they harbor that so intensely attracts darkness? Today, we will journey together through revelations that many won't dare to hear until the end. If you've stuck around this far, you've already realized that none of this is coincidence. Prepare yourself, because what you're about to discover is not for the faint of heart. There comes a point when the invisible begins to reveal itself so clearly that even skeptics must admit something extraordinary is happening, and that point has already been reached. An underground movement, like roots spreading in the darkness, is preparing the ground for the next great harvest. The signs are no longer hidden in ancient books or forgotten symbols. They materialize in crises, in the fall of governments, in disasters that seem natural but carry within them a weight far beyond what meets the eye. Have you ever noticed how certain nations seem to be sucked into a wave of chaos one after the other? First, small cracks appear, as if they were merely political or social problems. But soon these cracks open, and darkness enters with full force, creating divisions, internal wars, and an atmosphere of collective despair. This doesn't happen by chance, and it doesn't happen just anywhere. There's an order, a plan, as if on a board where pieces are moved according to something much larger. And when we look more closely, we see that the countries targeted for this harvest are not chosen for their strength, but for their disguised weakness. Many of them believe they are secure, sustained by wealth or armies, but in reality, they are already surrendered, having allowed their essence to be corroded. It is not gold, not technology, not weapons that protect a nation. The true foundation lies in what pulses invisibly, in the energy that unites people and territory. When this foundation is abandoned, the invitation to the harvest is made. But don't think this is something distant or beyond our reach. The omen is like a wind that blows before a storm. It's felt in people's eyes, in the weight of a city's atmosphere, in the way the streets suddenly fall silent, as if even the ground knows what's about to happen. It's in this silence that the choice is made: resist or surrender. And most don't even realize they've already made their choice. Now stop for a moment and reflect with me. Do you believe these signs are just happening out there in distant lands, or have they already begun to haunt your homeland? This is the first question we need to face head on, because omens don't choose who is ready to hear them. They simply arrive. And once they arrive, there's no turning back. There are times when even the sky seems to want to warn us. The stars, which have always been signs of guidance and hope, begin to shine strangely, as if hiding a heavy secret. And it is in this cosmic silence that certain countries are marked. Don't think this is mere poetry. The constellations have always served as clocks and maps, and when their brightness changes, it is not just an astronomical phenomenon, but a silent cry from the universe. It is as if the heavens are signaling, the next harvest will be here. These nations are not chosen at random. They carry ancient histories, pacts buried in the earth, memories that have not been healed. Often, they are countries that built their greatness on the suffering of forgotten peoples, on injustices that have never been redressed. Time may erase human memory, but it cannot erase the invisible marks etched in the soil. And when this soil is deeply wounded, it cries out. This cry rises, and the answer comes in the form of a harvest. It is like a spiritual debt that finally arrives to be collected. And if you look closely, you'll notice that the signs are already happening in these places. Structures that seemed indestructible begin to crumble like sandcastles. The economy, politics, social peace, everything suddenly collapses, as if an invisible hand were taking away their livelihood. And leaders, no matter how powerful they think they are, can't explain or resolve the situation. They try with speeches, they try with weapons, they try with agreements, but nothing works. Because this isn't a battle that can be won with human strategies. Now, imagine the weight of an entire nation being dragged into this process. Millions of people walking without realizing they're entering the eye of an invisible hurricane. Many will continue living as if nothing were happening, but within them, an emptiness begins to grow, a nameless anguish. a despair that no distraction can erase. It's then that one realizes that the call of the harvest is not only collective, but also individual. Every heart feels it, even if it tries to deny it. And I ask you, hasn't the country you live in also been marked? Could it be that the signs you've been ignoring, the chaos, the division, the violence, aren't they exactly the announcement that the next harvest is already on the way? This is a painful question, but it's impossible to escape it. Because when the silence of the stars points, no one can pretend they haven't heard. There's a curious detail about this harvest process. It doesn't arrive like a loud storm right away. On the contrary, it begins silently, subtly, almost imperceptibly, like water slowly seeping into the cracks of a rock until it disintegrates completely. This invisible advance is darkness's most dangerous weapon, because it takes hold without resistance, without struggle, almost with the permission of its own victims. Nations that fall under this influence don't realize it at first. On the contrary, they believe they are living in a time of progress, modernity, and achievements. There is a false sense of victory, as if everything is going for the better. But behind the scenes, the real plot is already being written. Culture is shaped, values are eroded, identity is gradually erased. And when they realize it, they no longer have roots to sustain them. It's like a huge tree that appears sturdy, but is completely rotten inside. This invisible advance acts not only on external structures but also within people. It works on fear, apathy, and indifference. It creates a generation that no longer cares about the sacred, that no longer feels the weight of life, that lives numb. And when a nation reaches this point, it becomes vulnerable, open, without a shield. The harvest then becomes inevitable, because the people are not only weakened, but also unaware of their own fragility. That's why we so often hear about the sudden collapse of countries that seemed strong and stable. It wasn't sudden. It was the result of years of invisible infiltration. It was the silent, patiently built preparation, right up to the exact moment of collapse. When that moment arrives, there's no stopping it. It's like a dam breaking. The force is devastating and leaves nothing standing. And here's the most disturbing part. Many who hear this message now may already be living within this process, without realizing it. Have you ever wondered if the apathy, coldness, and emptiness so many people feel today aren't precisely the sign of this invisible progress? This question needs to resonate deep within you, because ignoring it could mean being swallowed up without even realizing it. Every harvest begins with a breach, and the most frightening thing is realizing that this breach is not created by external forces, but by the people of the marked nation itself. When a country chooses to abandon what held it together, when it trades its essence for fleeting illusions, it itself opens the door to darkness. It is not the enemy that forcibly invades, but the land itself that surrenders without realizing it. This rift often emerges as division. People who once walked side by side begin to see each other as enemies. Siblings fight, neighbors hate each other. What was once a united body shatters into factions. This rupture creates a collective void, and the void is always filled by something. When the void is fueled by resentment, pride, and greed, the harvest finds the perfect ground to germinate. The people, blinded by anger and selfishness, don't realize they're becoming part of their own destruction. They believe they're fighting for justice, freedom, or progress, but deep down, they're only fueling the energy that accelerates their own downfall. It's like someone who lights a flame to illuminate the path but unwittingly sets fire to the dry field around them. The blaze soon becomes uncontrollable, and the saddest thing is to see that, even when the signs are clear, many continue to insist on the same path. The more warnings appear, the deeper they sink into error, mocking those who try to warn them. This willful blindness is the fuel that turns the chasm into an abyss. And once the abyss is opened, nothing can stop the advance of what comes from outside. And here's the big question. Aren't you, in your daily choices, also opening small cracks within yourself? Because the process that destroys a nation begins first within each heart. And if each heart is a territory, then the harvest has already begun within many. Even before it manifests itself in the country, there are places that carry an invisible weight inherited from past generations. Ancient pacts, injustices never healed, blood spilled, never honored. All of this remains like a silent mark on the earth. Time may advance, empires may fall, cities may change, but what remains unresolved continues to echo like a persistent whisper, and this echo is an invitation to harvest. Some countries are proud of their history, But they fail to realize that much of that history is built on pain. Peoples were massacred, cultures erased, promises never fulfilled. These wounds don't disappear just because books no longer mention them. They remain alive, throbbing in the invisible, waiting for the right moment to manifest. And when that moment arrives, the harvest finds fertile soil. This is why we see certain nations plunge into seemingly inexplicable crises. No matter how many leaders try to govern, how many plans are made, how much wealth is accumulated, nothing works, nothing lasts, because there is no way to build on cursed ground without first acknowledging and healing what was left behind. The harvest does not forgive forgotten debts. What few understand is that this process is not only collective, but also personal. Often, inherited curses belong not only to nations but to families and individuals. What was unresolved by our ancestors in some way still resonates within us. And to ignore this is to allow the harvest to advance unhindered. The secret lies in recognizing, bringing to light, and breaking the invisible pacts that still bind so many destinies. Now think with me. Aren't the struggles you're experiencing today a reflection of wounds that aren't just yours, but inherited? And isn't the country you live in also carrying ancient scars that cry out for resolution? This is the echo that cannot be ignored, because it announces that the harvest is closer than many imagine. There are countries that believe they are secure because they have strong leaders, solid governments, or powerful alliances. But what they don't realize is that this throne is already empty inside. It doesn't matter who sits in the seat of power, because the seat no longer supports anyone. It has been corroded by corruption, lies, and the insatiable quest for control. And when the throne breaks, the entire kingdom crumbles. This is one of the clearest signs of the harvest. Leaders who emerge with promises of salvation, but soon prove incapable of delivering. They stand like giants before the people, but deep down, they are puppets of forces they don't understand. Every speech, every decision, every sudden fall in reputation is just part of a plot already written. The people look to them for answers, but all they receive is silence disguised as fine words. And the cruelest thing is that in this process, the population's trust crumbles. People no longer believe in anything or anyone. Disbelief settles like a shadow and erodes collective hope. A country without hope is like a body without a soul. It continues to exist, but is dead inside. This is the perfect scenario for the harvest to unfold, when life still pulses externally, but there is no essence behind it. Don't think, however, that all this happens solely due to incompetence or chance. There's an invisible thread pulling these pieces on the board, ensuring that every king and queen, every president and dictator walks precisely toward their destined destiny. Some even believe they're in control, but deep down, they're being driven by a tide that carries them straight to the abyss. The power they so desire becomes the very trap that destroys them. And perhaps the most disturbing detail of all is this: the people who place their faith in these fallen thrones don't realize they are, in fact, giving up their energy, their devotion, and even their very freedom as fuel for the harvest. It's not just the kings who fall, but all those who blindly kneel before them. Have you ever noticed how the whole world seems to be shaking, even when the ground beneath your feet remains firm? These aren't just physical earthquakes, but invisible tremors that shake societies, cultures, and even families. These are crises that arise suddenly, unexpected ruptures, changes so rapid that no one can keep up. These tremors are the whispers of the harvest, the first stirrings of something much greater that is about to emerge. The curious thing is that these earthquakes aren't limited to unstable regions. They also strike countries considered exemplars of stability and progress. Places where one would never imagine chaos could take hold begin to shake, revealing that there is no solid ground outside of that which is eternal. The entire world is being tested, and the first cracks are already visible. These invisible tremors have a devastating effect. They expose what was hidden. Secret scandals come to light. Truths buried for decades are revealed. The masks of leaders and institutions fall before everyone's eyes. What seemed unshakable proves fragile, and what seemed hidden reveals itself with a force no one can contain. It's as if the earth itself is spewing forth everything that can no longer remain hidden. And when these earthquakes hit a country, it can no longer rebuild itself in the same way. It may even try to rebuild. It may even invent new systems and new leadership, but the essence has been shaken. The collective heart has been broken, and no political or cultural makeup can hide the scars. It is at this precise moment that the harvest finds space to enter, because the foundation is no longer firm. The most profound thing about all this is realizing that these tremors don't ask for permission to happen. They arrive without warning, destabilize without mercy, and tear away masks without mercy. If you feel like the world around you is already shaking, even if the ground is stable, perhaps it's because the harvest is already calling your own nation's name. There is a nation that built its identity on the idea of being the center of the world, a modern empire that erected gigantic towers, believing that its economic and military strength would sustain its reign forever. This land has always been seen as an example, a model, a beacon for the rest of the planet. But what few realize is that, while its towers pointed to the sky, the roots of this nation were slowly rotting. The glare of artificial lights covered the invisible rot, like makeup on a body that no longer breathes. And now the cracks can no longer be hidden, for they have become exposed wounds before the eyes of the world. Today, this land that once thought itself untouchable is divided as never before. The people clash in the streets and in speeches, each side believing they own the truth, while unity crumbles before everyone's eyes. These aren't just political differences. It's as if an invisible line has been drawn between brothers, transforming them into mortal enemies. Every protest, every conflict, every raised voice is another brick ripped from this tower that can no longer support itself. What seemed indestructible now totters, and the world watches in astonishment, incredulous that the fall could be so swift. It's not just politics that's broken, but the very spirit of the nation. People no longer believe in anything, and faith in any shared future has dissolved into ashes. A spiritual void has taken hold, and this void is fertile ground for harvest. When a people can no longer see purpose, when each citizen closes in on their own pain and pride, the harvest finds an open door. This is the secret few understand. It's not the strength of arms or the magnitude of wealth that keeps a nation standing, but the invisible flame of hope. And that flame, there, is fading. This country has always believed it could save itself through technology, money, and power over others. But the truth is that no empire survives when it forgets what sustains it from within. The collapse will not come from outside, nor will it be caused by enemy armies, but will originate within its own home. Leaders will fall, towers will crumble, and the very land that believed itself eternal will bear witness to its ruin. The harvest does not ask permission to enter. It simply finds the void and settles in, sucking everything dry until only ash remains. There is also an ancient land, which for centuries was a symbol of royalty, culture, and dominion over the seas. A nation that once controlled colonies in every corner of the world, bearing the weight of a once shining crown. But today that crown no longer shines. The gold that supported her throne has turned to rust, and the world that once bowed before her no longer recognizes her as queen. The precious stones that once adorned her crown are now mere memories of a past that will never return. This country, which once dictated the rules for so many cultures, now finds itself in turmoil within its own walls. Its streets are the scene of conflict, its traditions are questioned, and its identity dissolves like sand blown by the wind. What was once a symbol of strength is now merely a memory. Castles that still stand as monuments to ancient glory no longer represent power, but ruins disguised as heritage. People walk within these historic walls unaware that the present no longer bears the weight of the past. Internal divisions corrode like rust. Social crises multiply, and this nation's voice on the world stage no longer resonates with authority. It is like an aging queen who insists on dressing in finery, but whose voice no longer commands respect, only pity. Darkness has found fertile ground in this loss of identity, and the harvest approaches like a vulture on wounded flesh. The empire that once ruled over other peoples is now governed by its own silent decay. The most painful thing is that even in the face of these signs, many continue to live as if everything were normal. They walk through historic squares, celebrate ancient traditions, gaze at imposing monuments, but they fail to realize that all of this is merely a shell, devoid of true life. It's like visiting a museum of glories that no longer exist. The harvest doesn't care about memories. It acts on the present, and this nation's present is about to be completely swallowed up. When the crown finally shatters, it will be like the sound of glass breaking amidst the silence. There will be no trumpets, no official announcements, only the emptiness of a greatness gone, replaced by the shadow of a new cycle. And the world will witness once again that no throne is eternal, no crown lasts forever, and all glory that is not rooted in that which is eternal inevitably fades. The signs are clear. Internal divisions, seemingly insoluble social crises, a loss of influence and respect among other nations. The world looks upon this land and no longer sees it as a queen, but as a tired old woman, trying to hold together a crown that no longer belongs to her. The harvest approaches, and the weight of forgotten history takes its toll on everyone. The most shocking thing is that many within this country still live as if nothing were happening. They walk its ancient streets, admire its castles and monuments, but fail to realize that all this glory is but a memory. The present is already gripped by invisible chaos, and the future points to an inevitable decline, the end of a cycle, the collapse of a royalty that failed to understand that nothing built without eternal roots can remain standing. And here I want to challenge you. Which European country do you think I'm talking about? Leave your answer in the comments. I want to see how many of you can identify this crown that no longer shines. There is a land in the East that, for centuries, was marked by discipline, tradition, and silence. A people shaped by hard work, obedience, and belief in their collective destiny. But in recent decades, this nation has transformed into an immense dragon, building steel cities in record time, and coming to dominate the world's markets and technologies. Many look upon it with respect and fear, believing nothing can stop it. But what they fail to see is that every dragon also carries within itself the seed of its own downfall. This country has built its strength on speed, pressure, and exploitation. Seemingly unstoppable growth hides deep cracks. The people, suffocated by a system that demands everything in exchange for almost nothing, are already beginning to feel the weight of servitude. The apparent unity hides an undercurrent of fear, forced silence, and unheard cries. This pent-up energy builds up like a volcano about to explode. The dragon grows, but its flight is no longer free. It is surrounded by enemies, external pressures, and internal crises that cannot be chronicled in newspapers. Every economic achievement comes with a hidden price. Every strategic victory carries an invisible debt. It's as if this dragon is feeding on its own flesh to stay alive. And sooner or later, this sacrifice will lead to exhaustion. The most striking thing is that, as the world watches this giant expand, few realize that its fall has already begun. It won't be a sudden collapse, but a slow, inevitable, corrosive erosion. The harvest doesn't need to tear down its walls all at once. It just needs to blow on its insides until everything collapses on its own. The dragon, however large, cannot fight the emptiness growing within. When this dragon falls, the impact will be felt in every corner of the earth. The global economy will tremble, alliances will shatter, and the mask of invincibility will be ripped away before everyone's eyes. What many believe to be the new center of the world will reveal its true fragility, and the harvest will be witnessed by billions. At the southern tip of the world lies a land marked by contrasts, imposing mountains and endless seas, hidden riches and people with an indomitable spirit. But it is also a land that carries within itself ancient wounds, hidden suffering, and pacts that have never been broken. For decades, this nation believed it could reinvent itself, rise above crises, and always begin anew. But there comes a point where unhealed wounds exact their toll. This country lives in a constant cycle of broken promises, of leaders who rise and fall like waves in the sea. Each generation places hope in new names and new speeches, but everything dissolves into the same old chaos. The people, tired and divided, no longer believe in solutions. And when hope fades, the harvest finds space to manifest with even greater force. The fire burning in this land is not only that of revolts and protests, but also that of the hidden forces that fuel its instability. It's as if there's an invisible pact that prevents any true prosperity from flourishing. Every victory is temporary. Every achievement is followed by an even greater fall. It's a cycle that imprisons the nation, and the harvest cycle is reaching its peak. The shadows of this land are long and dense. They hide secrets, injustices never righted, debts unpaid. The people carry within them immense strength, but this strength has been diverted down paths that lead not to freedom, but only to exhaustion. And when a people is exhausted, they lose their ability to resist. At that moment, the weight of the harvest becomes unbearable. The most painful thing is realizing that this land, so rich in beauty and resources, could have been a fertile garden, but chose to walk among fire and shadows. Now, its harvest will not be one of abundance but of desolation. And when that happens, the world will see that even the most distant lands cannot escape the inevitable call. There is a country that everyone regards as a giant. Its territory is immense, its natural riches seem inexhaustible, and its people are known for their joy, creativity, and resilience. This giant has always been seen as a promise, as a powerhouse that would one day rise up and show the world its true power. But what few admit is that this giant stands on clay, and feet of clay don't hold weight for long. This country lives a painful paradox. It possesses riches that could feed multitudes, but its people remain trapped in scarcity. It possesses fertile lands, but what grows from them is often used to feed distant interests, rather than the very heart of the nation. It has a warm and faithful people, but they are also easily deceived by leaders who prey on this hope. It's as if every blessing is transformed into a curse before it can flourish. The giant marches on, but each step is uncertain. Its politics are unstable, its economy is fragile, and internal division grows like an invisible cancer. With each crisis, people believe they've reached rock bottom, but they soon discover there's always one more step to fall. This repetition wears them down, saps their strength, and leaves the territory vulnerable to the inevitable. When the harvest arrives, it finds a tired, defenseless body, incapable of fighting back. Most intriguingly, this country carries within itself a profound spiritual calling. It was set apart to be a beacon, but chose to walk in darkness. With every opportunity for transformation, corruption replaced renewal. With every chance for rebirth, selfishness replaced unity. The result is a giant that could shake the world with its light, but now finds itself ready to fall because of the fragility of its feet of clay. And when this giant falls, it won't be just him who will feel the impact. The entire world will tremble, because his fall will shake economies, alliances, and even the hopes of other peoples who believed in his example. The harvest of this giant will be a visible sign that no promise can stand when built on broken foundations. There is also a nation that has always lived surrounded by the sea, an island where the sun rises first to illuminate its temples and cities. A disciplined people proud of their culture and technology, who rebuilt their land after great catastrophes and became an example of resilience. But what many don't realize is that, despite such discipline and order, this island lives in a profound silent darkness. Development brought modernity, but it also brought loneliness, emptiness, and an invisible weight that suffocates its population. The level of despair is so high that many give up on life before even discovering their true purpose. This collective sadness is not merely social or psychological. It is a sign of the harvest that has already begun to be reaped. It is as if the setting sun's glow were, in fact, the announcement of an approaching end. This island, so admired for its machines and technology, has forgotten to nourish the souls of its people. It has turned work into a prison, discipline into a chain, and progress into an altar that consumes lives. The result is a people who smile on the outside but bleed on the inside. And when a country loses its inner joy, it becomes an easy target for the darkness that lurks, waiting for the right moment to enter. This island's harvest will not be marked by external wars, but by a silent internal collapse. There will be no explosions for all to see, but there will be hidden tears, broken hearts, and a slow crumbling of what seemed perfect. The fall will not come from without, but from the weight that can no longer be carried within. This is the cruelest form of harvest, when a country implodes in the face of its own emptiness, and when the sun sets over this island. Many will not understand what happened. They will say it was merely an economic crisis, merely a social issue, but those who observe with deeper eyes will know that the harvest cycle has been fulfilled there. The island of the setting sun will show the world that even the strictest discipline cannot stop the advance of darkness. When the heart has already been surrendered, the cycle is almost complete. When we observe the world today, it's impossible not to notice that the pieces are already in place on the board. The East trembles under the weight of its dragons and empires. The West staggers on its cracked towers. The South bleeds amid broken promises and cursed riches, and even the most disciplined islands begin to feel the emptiness that corrodes within. The harvest is not an isolated event, but an inevitable sequence. Each nation that falls makes way for the next, until the entire map is shrouded in shadow. And most frighteningly, the next target is no longer a mystery. It has been revealed, and the invisible clock is already ticking down. If we look closely, we will see that these lands we describe are not just distant geographies. They are mirrors. What happens there is reflected in all of us because the harvest recognizes no political borders, flags, or languages. It advances like a surging river, sweeping away everything in its path without distinction. When a tower falls in the north, the tremor is felt in the south. When a dragon crumbles in the east, the void echoes in the west. And so, little by little, the entire world is called to face the same reality. No one is safe. This revelation was not written to instill fear, but to open our eyes, because there is still a choice. The harvest is inevitable for those who insist on living in the void, but it is not the destiny of those who decide to awaken. Every person, every family, every heart can become a seed of resistance amidst the chaos, and even if empires fall, even if crowns shatter, those who keep the inner flame alive will be able to cross the night and see the dawn that will come after it. But this awakening requires courage. It requires renouncing the comfort of blindness and diving deeply into what truly sustains life. The final harvest map is not just a picture of nations about to fall, but also a portrait of the silent battle that rages within each of us. The same dragon that rules empires may be hidden in the pride of a heart. The same tower that rose in the west may be built on someone's personal ego. The same giant with feet of clay may be the life of someone who appears strong on the outside but feels empty on the inside. The true revelation is that each country described also exists within us, and what we see in the outside world is merely a projection of what happens within. And now, if you've made it this far, you can no longer say you didn't know. You've walked with me through every sign, every omen, every revelation. You've seen the cracked towers, the fallen thrones, the weary dragons, and the rusted crowns. All of this was shown to you so you could understand that the harvest isn't just theirs, it's ours. And if you felt this calling, if this message touched the deepest part of your being, I invite you to continue this journey with me. Subscribe to the channel now, because we still have much to unravel. And so I know who truly stayed with me until the end. Write the keyword in the comments. Harvest. I want to see how many resisted this revelation until the last minute.